In this video, I'm going to have a look at creating a Windows 11 bootable USB with the Dell Driver Pack Slipstreamed. So the first thing we need to do is go to the software download page for Windows 11, and we need to select the third option, which is the direct ISO download links. The direct ISO download links have an install.wim, which is easier to slipstream files into opposed to an install.est. So the installation ISO is a large file and it's going to take a while to download, so I'm going to speed up the recording here. So once the installation ISO has been downloaded, we can also go to the Microsoft Update Catalog and download the latest cumulative update for this particular build of Windows 11. And in the Microsoft Update Catalog, I'm doing a search for a cumulative update for 23H2x64. So I want to download the latest cumulative update, which is going to be listed near the top. And at the time of making this video, this is the November 2023 cumulative update. And there's also a cumulative update for the .NET framework. So I'll also download this. And I'll slipstream these into the Windows 11 installation media. So now I want to go to Dell Drivers and Downloads, and I want to select my model. And if I press Windows and R and type in MSInfo32, I can get details about the system model as well as the Windows edition. So I need to select Check for Updates and then cancel the Check for Updates. And then I want to select the operating system as Windows 11 and the categories as System Management. So I want the Dell Command Dell Deploy Driver Pack and also the Dell Command Dell Deploy Windows Preboot Environment Driver Pack. So one thing to note is the Dell Command Dell Deploy Driver Packs are only available for the XPS, Latitude, OptiPlex and Precision ranges of products. They're not available for the home sector products such as the Inspiron range. So the Preboot Environment Driver Pack contains a subset of the drivers in the full driver pack. So typically it only includes the storage drivers, which are needed to load the storage controller driver to view the drive to install Windows on, and also the network drivers, which are required to connect to the internet to download updates and drivers during the Windows installation. And now I'm going to install Microsoft Visual Studio Code using winget. So if I right click the start button and select terminal, I can copy and paste the command to install Microsoft Visual Studio Code. So essentially I'm going to be using PowerShell, and Visual Studio Code is a general purpose code editor which makes it easier to work with PowerShell. If the winget command can't be found, then you've got an old version of PowerShell in App Installer. So you're going to need to open up the Microsoft Store and update the library. And finally, I'm going to download the GitHub repository as a zip file and extract it. So because we're going to use some commands that require elevated privileges, such as the Diskpart commands to format a USB flash drive, we're going to need to run Visual Studio Code as an administrator. And then we want to navigate to this GitHub repository and open it. We're going to need to select Yes, I trust the authors to run the code. And in order to use PowerShell within Visual Studio Code, we're going to need to go to the extensions and install the PowerShell extension. And you may get a prompt to automatically install this when you open up a PowerShell file. So now that the extension has been installed, when I go to this PowerShell file, to the right hand corner, I've got the option to run the script or to run a selection in the script. So let's just test this for loop, and here we see that we've got index 1, 2, and 3 display. One thing about Visual Studio Code is that its directory is the directory of the script file being ran, and we want to change this to our user profile so we can just access everything from within downloads. So we've changed the directory to the user directory, and when we have a look at the directory, we see that we've got the downloads folder. So next, you're going to want to copy and paste the name of your installation ISO, and then you want to get the SHA-256 of the installation ISO just to make sure you've got a complete download. So here we've got the hash, and to copy and paste from the terminal, you're going to need to press Ctrl, Shift, and C. And now if we go back to the Windows 11 software download page and select Verify your download, we can press Ctrl and F and paste in this ISO checksum, and notice it finds a match. If it doesn't find a match, your ISO is unique and therefore it is corrupt, so you'll need to re-download it. If your driver pack is a cab file, you're going to need to extract it. So what you want to do is just make sure that you've got the name of your cab file and run this line of code to extract it into a folder called boot drivers expanded. And we're going to need to create this folder, boot drivers expanded. So here you see we've got all the boot drivers, and if we have a look at its contents, we've got WinPEE, and then we've got this x64 folder. So we're just interested in this x64 folder, and notice it's got a storage and network subfolders, so it's got the storage and network drivers. So now we've got the boot drivers prepared. And the next thing we want is the boot.wim from the installation ISO. So we're going to need to right click the installation ISO and select mount, and then navigate to the sources folder and then get to the boot.wim. So if we copy this over to downloads and then right click it and select properties, we just want to make sure the attribute is not read only. So if this is checked, uncheck it. So we can now create a folder called boot temp, and this gives us all the files and folders we need to slipstream the Preboot Environment Driver Pack to the boot.wim. So we can have a look at the details of the boot.wim, and we see that we've actually got 2 indexes, and we want to slipstream the driver to both these indexes. So we've got a for loop which is going to look through the indexes, and it's going to mount the index to the temporary folder. Then it's going to slipstream the driver, and then it's going to commit the changes, updating the boot.wim in place. So if we run this selection, it's going to take a while to carry out these commands. So you see it's mounting the image, and then it's adding these 40 drivers, and then it's going to commit the changes. And then it's going to go through the other index and then carry out the same operation. So now I have a updated boot.wim, and now I need to essentially do the same operation to the install.wim. So this driver pack is Dell update package. So it's a Windows application which gives the option to extract when you run it. So let's just create the folder install drivers extract. And because it's a large file, it's going to take a while to extract it. And once again, we're interested in this x64 folder. And we want to call this install drivers. So once again, we need the install temp folder, and we also need the install updates folder, where we're going to copy the updates. Finally, we need the install.wim from the sources folder of the installation ISO. And once again, we want to right click the install.wim and select properties, and we want to make sure that the read-only attribute isn't checked. So the install.wim has a large number of indexes corresponding to the different editions of Windows 11. Now, when I pressed Windows and R and typed in MSInfo32, I seen that the edition that I have installed is Windows 11 Pro, which is index 6. So in general, you're only going to want to update the index that you're interested in, because updating all the indexes will take a very long time and also create a very large install.wim. So we can just run the following selection, which is going to update the driver. If we want to also slipstream the cumulative update, then we need to add the additional command. And here you're just going to want to make sure that you've got the names of the updates that you've downloaded. So chances are by the time you view this video, there's going to be newer cumulative updates, which you should use in place of the November 2023 ones, which I have here. So you're just going to want to update the name of the two packages. So the cumulative update and also the cumulative update for the .NET framework. And if you want to add other packages, then you need to add this /package path equals and then the string containing the file path to the package that you want to add. So I'm just going to add this into the for loop after slipstreaming the drivers and before committing the changes. This for loop is only going to update index 6. So in your case, if you want to update a different index, you're going to have to change the index to match the index that you want to update, which is why I've just put it as a variable at the top of the loop. So this process is going to take a long time because it's kind of like the equivalent of a Windows install. So you're basically extracting the setup files to this folder, then adding all the drivers to it, and then slipstreaming them. So because it's the full Windows install, it's essentially similar to the time that it takes to install Windows on a device. So now that the operation has completed successfully, I've got an updated install.wim and an updated boot.wim. So if we just compare the install.wim to the original install.wim, we see that it's increased from 5.48 gig to 8.95 gig in my case. And if we have a look at the boot.wim, it's increased from 508 megabytes to 540 megabytes. So the boot.wim is less than 4.0 gigabytes, which means it can fit on a FAT32 partition, which has an upper file size of 4.0 gigabytes. And install.wim exceeds this file size, so it must be placed onto an NTFS partition, otherwise it's truncated. So I'm going to insert a USB flash drive, and in this case it's a 32 gigabyte USB flash drive. And I've got a 256 gigabyte internal solid state drive. So now I'm going to run the PowerShell command Diskpart, which is going to take me to the Diskpart program. So I'm not going to be able to highlight code and select run selection. I'm going to have to copy and paste this into the terminal to feed it into the Diskpart program. So let's list the disk. And here we see we've got disk 0 and disk 1. And we can tell by the sizes of the disks that disk 1 is the USB flash drive. So we want to select it, and we want to convert it to GPT if it's not GPT. So this star means it is already GPT and therefore doesn't need to be converted. So now we would just want to clear it. So we want to clear all partitions from it. And we want to create our own custom partitions. So we want one that's going to be a primary partition that's the size of 1024 megabytes, and then we want to create another primary partition that spans the rest of the drive. So now we can list the partitions, and partition 1 is the 1024 megabyte partition. So let's go ahead and select this. And now we can go ahead and format it as FAT32 and give it the label boot. And let's just assign it the drive letter H. So now we want to select partition 2. And we want to format this as NTFS and give it the label install. And we'll assign this the letter I. So one thing to note, when you're pasting into the terminal, press Ctrl Shift and V, but when you're copying the code from the script, press Ctrl and C. So now we've got our boot partition. What we want to do is copy everything from the installation ISO except for the sources folder. And then we want to create our own sources folder. And within the sources folder, we want to copy our updated boot.wim. So now we can go to the install partition, and we want to essentially carry out a similar process. Copy everything apart from the sources folder. And then we want to create our own sources folder. And we want to copy everything apart from the boot.wim and install.wim. So if we just press Ctrl and A, and then hold down Ctrl and unclick the boot.wim and install.wim, then we can drag and drop everything apart from these two files. And then we want to copy the updated boot.wim and install.wim. So the install.wim is a very large file, so it's going to take a while to copy across. So now that it's copied across, the bootable USB is created. It's got a FAT32 boot partition because a subset of UEFI BIOSes require a FAT32 partition to register a USB as a boot device. So it is also possible to create an installation ISO. So create a folder called installation media and essentially copy the updated installation media to it. And then it's a bit more complicated to do this. So there's another GitHub repository which contains a function to create an installation ISO. So if we just copy and paste the code here and run the script, it'll give us the function we need to create an installation ISO. So I need to exit Diskpart in order to run another line of PowerShell code. And now that this has been run, what we want to do is create an installation ISO. So I'm just going to use the original name, but add drivers to the end of it. And I can use the original title, or I can use a more sensible title. So I'm just going to use a more sensible title, which gives me the version of Windows. So it will take a while to create this installation ISO. And you should just be able to use this installation ISO as any other installation ISO and create a bootable USB from it using something like Rufus. Since I've already created a bootable USB, I'm now going to just go ahead and test it. So if I power off the system and power it up and press F2, I should get to the Dell UEFI BIOS setup. And I just want to delete the old boot entries. And the storage controller is set to RAID, which requires the VMD's Intel Rapid Storage Technology driver. This isn't included in the installation media by default, but we now have included it. So I'm going to go ahead and also perform a Dell data wipe. So the internal solid state drive is totally clean and doesn't have any old drivers or anything on it. So now if I power up the Dell and press F12, I should get to the Dell UEFI BIOS boot menu, and the USB flash drive displays as two boot devices. So we've got the FAT32 boot partition and we've got the NTFS install partition. And on this particular system, it doesn't matter what partition you select, you'll boot into the installation media. However, on some other systems, only the FAT32 partition will display as a boot device. So the OEM product key is going to be automatically input, then you can accept the license agreement. Notice that when you get to where do you want to install Windows, that the drive is listed, and this is because the storage controller driver is included in the boot.wim. So now the Windows installation has completed, and you're going to be taken to the Windows 11 out-of-the-box experience setup. And now, because the install.wim contains all the drivers, it's going to take a bit longer when it's getting the devices ready, because it's essentially installing all the system drivers here. And then once it's restarted the device a few times, you're going to be taken to the Windows 11 out-of-the-box experience setup. And at this stage, it's essentially like a factory image, because you don't have any user account set up, but you've got Windows 11 installed with all the system drivers and also updates. So in the Windows 11 out-of-the-box experience setup, you can connect to the internet because the wireless driver has been slipstreamed into the installation media. Now, Microsoft are generally pretty good at slipstreaming the network drivers. However, the Windows 11 installation media is only being updated once a year. So if you've got something that's really bleeding edge, then there's a chance that essentially the driver didn't exist for the device by the time that Microsoft made the installation media. So in this case, having manually slipstreamed the driver will allow you to complete the Windows 11 out-of-the-box experience setup. And now on the Windows desktop, if I right click the start button and select Device Manager, I can see that all the system drivers are installed. And if I right click the start button and select Settings and then Windows Update and look at the update history, I can see that the cumulative update has been installed.